What's something you still can't believe to this day? What's the SWAT team did when they raided my house? It happened 4 weeks ago when my Aunt Lucia came to visit for Thanksgiving weekend. I had been working on my survival world for about 3 days. When I realized I didn't want to waste time hunting down ender pearls to locate the end portal, I decided to do what any reasonable Minecrafter would do and stayed up for 67 hours straight building a redstone calculator that generated the coordinates to the nearest end portal. By the time it was done, I felt like Albert Einstein, but only smarter. I hoarded some loot in preparation for the journey, gathering weapons, swords, bows, armor, TNT, the works. The next morning, I loaded up my base and left it alone while I went to shower. That's when it happened. By the time I came back into my room, Aunt Lucia was on the phone, pale as a ghost. And when she saw me, she started shaking in fear like I was an IRS auditor. "Don't come any closer. I've already called them." She backed up against the wall. "Called who? Why are you in my room?" I asked her. She pointed at my computer screen with a shaking hand. I saw everything. The coordinates, the weapons, the TNT. "You're planning something horrible. What are you talking about?" I looked at my screen. Just my Minecraft world paused where I'd left it. She pulled out her phone, showing me screenshots. "These numbers match Lakeview Elementary School. It's 87 miles from here, and you have bombs." "Lakeview? I don't even know what that is. Those are just—" "I went through your YouTube history," she screamed over me, now on the floor in panic. "Oklahoma City bombing documentary, World Trade Center attacks, Columbine timeline. You went through my computer?" That's my history homework. But she was already calling my mom at work. "Sharon, you need to come home now. Your son is planning to shoot and bomb a school. I have proof." She stood up to pace around my room and take pictures of everything. "He's been awake for 3 days straight. That's manic behavior. That's what they do before they snap." I was playing Minecraft. "What do you mean snap?" Within 20 minutes, my parents rushed in, and Aunt Lucia had already connected her laptop to our TV. "Look at his arsenal. Hundreds of weapons, explosives everywhere. And these coordinates lead directly to an elementary school with 400 students. Those are just chests in Minecraft. This is a training simulator." She clicked to the next slide, my YouTube history. "He's studying real bombings. Timothy McVeigh, Ted Kaczynski, the Boston Marathon. That's literally for Mr. Paxson's class. Mom, tell her, look at this." She showed a screenshot of my Discord. "He's in a group called the Ender Squad." Ender, as in ending lives. They share coordinates and weapon strategies. "It's about the Ender Dragon. Dad, it's a Minecraft boss." She pulled out her phone to call 911. My dad suddenly lunged at her, trying to grab the phone. "No, don't call them. If they come here, they'll deport me. They'll deport me." Aunt Lucia pulled away, stumbling backward. "Get away from me." She was already dialing. "This is urgent. My nephew has detailed attack plans for Lakeview Elementary. He has coordinates, weapons cache, explosive materials." She was crying now, still backing away from my dad, who stood frozen, his face pale. "He's been studying terrorist attacks for weeks. The FBI needs to know." My dad tried grabbing the phone again, but she pulled away. "Yes, operator. He's been awake for 67 hours straight. He built something he calls a calculator, probably for blast radius. It calculates coordinates in the game. Aunt Lucia, please." She showed my mom more screenshots. "This is a killing simulator." She pointed at my mob farm that auto-killed golems for iron. "This is a bomb-making manual." My Minecraft handbook with the TNT recipe circled. "Mom, those are all from Minecraft." Why isn't anyone listening? The 911 operator must have escalated it because Aunt Lucia suddenly said, "Yes, I'll stay on the line until they arrive." "No, he's here now." "Yes, 11 years old. Lakeview Elementary?" "Yes." "Who's arriving?" "Mom? Dad? What's happening?" My parents looked at each other, then at me, their faces pale. Nobody was answering me anymore. Then we heard it minutes later, multiple vehicles screeching to a stop outside, heavy boots on our porch. A megaphone boomed, "This is the police. We need everyone to exit the front door with hands visible, now." My dad opened the door slowly. SWAT officers in full tactical gear, rifles raised. "Hands where we can see them." Everyone out. We filed out onto our lawn and dropped to our knees while the officers tied our hands shut. All the neighbors were watching. Some were recording on their phones. The tactical team swept into our house. The whole time, Aunt Lucia kept screaming to untie her. She's innocent, that I'm the bomber, not her. 20 minutes later, they untied us and brought us back inside. The lead officer had my laptop on our kitchen table. "Ma'am, you reported an imminent threat to Lakeview Elementary. Show me this evidence." Aunt Lucia, still shaking, pointed at the screen. The coordinates on the screen, the weapons cache, the bombings he researched. I couldn't read the officer's face as he turned to me. "Son, explain what I'm looking at." My voice started shaking. "This is Minecraft, a video game. Video games have been linked to devastating attacks, son," the officer interrupted. I gulped. "How did you get these coordinates?" He asked me. I showed him my redstone calculator. "This looks very intricate," he commented before speaking into his radio. "I have reason to suspect plans for an attack." My knees buckled. Then another officer stepped forward. "Sir," he said to my dad, "the 911 call mentioned you tried to prevent reporting. We'll need to see some ID." My dad's face drained of color. The second officer pulled out a tablet and started typing something while dad reached for his back pocket with shaking hands. His wallet slipped through his fingers and hit the floor. He bent down to grab it but dropped it again. Mom reached over and put her hand on his arm to steady him while I stood there watching my whole life fall apart. Dad finally got the wallet open and pulled out his driver's license. The officer looked at it for maybe 2 seconds before handing it back. "I'll need to see additional documentation, sir." Dad's face went from pale to completely white, like someone had drained all the blood from his body. He mumbled something about his green card being in the bedroom safe upstairs. The lead officer nodded to one of the other SWAT guys who followed Dad up the stairs. Their boots made the whole house shake. While Dad was gone, the lead officer turned to us and started pointing at my stuff. "We're confiscating the computer, gaming console, and phone as evidence." Mom asked how long they'd keep everything, and he said it depends on what their tech team finds. 2 officers started unplugging my Xbox and wrapping up all the cords. Another one was putting my laptop in an evidence bag along with my phone from the counter. They even took my old Nintendo Switch from the TV stand. I watched them carry out 3 years of saved games and all my YouTube videos I'd been working on. Dad came back down with a manila folder, and his hands were still shaking, so bad he could barely hold it. The officers took pictures of every page of his documents before handing them back. The second officer kept making notes on his tablet, and Dad just stood there looking like he was about to throw up all over our kitchen floor. They gave us this yellow property receipt with everything they took listed on it. The lead officer said a detective would contact us within 48 hours, and we weren't allowed to leave town. He also said they'd be monitoring our internet activity, so we better not try anything stupid. Then they all just walked out like they hadn't just destroyed our entire house. We stood in our living room looking at the mess they'd made. Every drawer was pulled out, cushions thrown off the couch, books scattered everywhere. The neighbors were still outside with their phones recording everything through our windows. Mom went around closing all the curtains while Dad sat on the couch with his head in his hands not saying anything. anything. Aunt Lucia started talking immediately about how she did the right thing, and any responsible adult would have called 911 if they saw what she saw. Mom told her to stop talking, but Lucia kept going. She pulled out her phone and started showing us news articles about school shootings. Look at this one from last month. Started with online threats. I tried one more time to explain that it was just a game, and the coordinates were for finding the end portal in Minecraft. Lucia shook her head and said, "That's what all the shooters say," before they snap. Dad suddenly stood up without saying anything and walked straight out to the garage. We heard the door slam. That night was the worst night of my life. Nobody could sleep. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling while I heard Mom downstairs on the phone speaking Spanish to someone, probably my grandma. Dad was pacing back and forth in the living room all night. I could hear his footsteps going from the kitchen to the front door and back again over and over. Every time a car drove by outside, we all froze thinking it might be the police coming back. The next morning around 7, the phone rang, and Mom answered it. I could tell from her face it was bad news. She put it on speaker, and the principal from Lakeview Elementary was saying I was suspended immediately pending a threat assessment. He said it was protocol when there's any reported threat, even if it turns out to be false. Mom tried to explain that it was all a misunderstanding about a video game, but he cut her off and said the decision came from the district office, and there was nothing he could do. He said we'd get an email with information about the threat assessment meeting, and until then I wasn't allowed on the school property or at any school events. I wonder why Aunt Lucia jumped straight to terrorism without even asking what Minecraft is. The way she connected random dots, coordinates, TNT, history homework. There's something odd about how quickly she made those leaps in her mind right now. Mom hung up and just stared at the phone. Dad was still in the same clothes from yesterday, sitting at the kitchen table with dark circles under his eyes. Aunt Lucia was in the guest room and hadn't come out since last night. I asked Mom what a threat assessment was, and she said she didn't know, but we'd figure it out. She tried to smile, but I could see she was scared too. The house felt different now, like something had broken that couldn't be fixed. Every time I looked at the empty space where my computer used to be, I thought about my Minecraft world with the redstone calculator I'd spent 67 hours building. All that work just gone, and now I couldn't even go to the school. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I knew things were about to get a lot worse before they got better. He reached for his wallet with shaking hands and dropped it twice before Mom grabbed his arm to steady him. The second officer pulled out a tablet while Dad fumbled through his cards looking for his driver's license. When the officer asked for additional documentation, Dad went completely white and mumbled something about his green card being in the bedroom safe. The lead officer nodded for someone to go with him, and Dad walked down the hallway with an officer following close behind. While they were gone, the lead officer told us they were taking my computer, gaming console, and phone as evidence. Mom asked how long they'd keep everything, but he just said it depends on what their tech team finds. Dad came back with his documents, and the officers took pictures of everything before handing them back. The second officer typed notes on his tablet, while Dad stood there looking like he might throw up. They gave us a property receipt for all my stuff, and said a detective would contact us within 48 hours. The lead officer warned us not to leave town, and said they'd be monitoring our internet activity. After the SWAT team finally left, we stood in our destroyed living room while neighbors filmed us through their windows. Mom rushed around closing all the curtains while Dad sat on the couch with his head in his hands. Aunt Lucia started defending herself, saying she did the right thing, and any responsible adult would have called 911. She kept pulling up news articles about school shootings on her phone, even when Mom told her to stop talking. I tried explaining again that it was just a game, but Lucia said that's what all the shooters say before they snap. Dad suddenly stood up and walked out to the garage without saying anything. The next morning, Mom called Mr. Paxson and put him on speaker while she explained what happened. He promised to email the principal right away about the terrorism research being required homework, but his voice sounded worried like he might get in trouble for assigning that stuff. Dad didn't go to work that day, and his boss called 3 times before Mom finally answered and made up some story about a family emergency. We all knew Dad was terrified ICE would show up at his job if they found out about the raid. That afternoon, a car pulled up, and 2 people from Child Protective Services knocked on our door. They had clipboards and asked about my sleep schedule and whether I had access to weapons. Mom had to take them to the garage and show them our empty gun safe to prove we didn't own any firearms. The CPS worker sat me down at the kitchen table and asked if I ever felt angry or wanted to hurt people. I told her I just wanted to beat the Ender Dragon in Minecraft, but she kept writing everything down even though she clearly didn't understand what I was talking about. She asked about my friends and whether I'd been bullied at the school and if I'd ever thought about hurting myself or others. Meanwhile, our next door neighbor had already posted a video of the raid on Nextdoor with the caption asking what we were hiding. Mom showed me her phone later, and there were hundreds of comments from people in our neighborhood speculating about what happened. Some people said they always knew something was off about our family, and others were sharing screenshots from the video. My friends started texting to ask if I was okay, but Mom had taken my phone so I couldn't respond to anyone. She showed me one message from a kid whose parents said he couldn't talk to me anymore. That evening, the detective called and scheduled an interview for tomorrow at the police station. Mom asked if we needed a lawyer, and he said we were free to bring one, but it was just a preliminary interview to clear things up. After dinner, Mom spent hours calling legal aid organizations, but most were closed or had month-long waiting lists. She left voicemails at 5 different places before finally finding a clinic that offered a phone consultation for the next morning. While she was on the phone, Aunt Lucia sent a long email to our entire extended family, explaining how she prevented a tragedy. She included all her screenshots of my Minecraft world and YouTube history as proof that she saved lives. Mom's phone started blowing up with calls from worried relatives, asking if I was really planning to attack a school. My grandma called crying, and my uncle wanted to know if we needed money for a lawyer. The next morning, at the police station, they took us to a small room with a metal table and uncomfortable chairs. The detective had a notebook and asked me to explain exactly what Minecraft was and how it worked. I drew diagrams of the nether portal and end portal on a piece of paper, trying to show how the coordinates work in the game versus real life. He kept asking why I needed TNT and weapons if it was just a game. I explained about mining and fighting mobs, and how you need armor and swords to survive at night. He wrote everything down but kept asking the same questions different ways, like he was trying to catch me lying. Mom showed him the email from Mr. Paxson about the homework assignment, and the detective made copies of everything. After 3 hours of questions, he said they were still analyzing my hard drive and would know if I was lying about anything. Mom asked when we'd get my stuff back, and he said it could be weeks or even months. The detective pulled out another folder and spread out printed screenshots of my YouTube history. He pointed at the Oklahoma City documentary and asked why an 11-year-old would watch videos about bombings. Mom dug through her purse and pulled out the crumpled assignment sheet from Mr. Paxson's class that listed all the documentaries we had to watch for our terrorism unit. The detective made copies of it, but his face stayed suspicious like he thought we made it up. Then he asked about the Ender Squad and wanted to know who else else was in this group. I told him it was just 5 kids from different schools who played Minecraft together, and we mostly talked about finding diamonds and building farms. He wrote down their usernames when I remembered them, and asked for their real names too, but I only knew 2 of them. We sat in that small room for 3 more hours while he kept asking the same questions different ways. Finally, he stood up and said their tech team was taking apart my hard drive, byte by byte. He said if I was lying about anything, they'd find it and things would get much worse. Mom's hands were shaking when she asked again about getting my computer back. The detective shrugged and said these investigations take time, could be weeks or months before we hear anything. We drove home in silence, and I could see Mom checking the mirror every few seconds like she thought we were being followed. That evening while we were eating leftover pizza, the phone rang and Mom talked to someone for 20 minutes. It was a legal aid lawyer who explained the difference between what the school could do and actual criminal charges. She told Mom to write down everything that happened and save every email and not to talk to anyone about the case without a lawyer there. Mom hung up and started making a list on a yellow notepad while Dad sat at the table staring at nothing. The next morning, Mom's phone buzzed with an email from the school. They scheduled a threat assessment meeting for next week with the principal and the school psychologist and the resource officer. The email had a whole list of questions attached about my mental state and whether I had friends and if there were problems at home. Mom printed it out and started filling in the answers, but kept stopping to cry. Dad finally went back to work on Wednesday, but came home after lunch looking sick. He told Mom that everyone kept asking about the police cars and someone made a joke about him being a terrorist. He said he almost quit right there, but we need the money for lawyers. Mom rubbed his back while he sat at the kitchen table with his head down. The school wanted a written statement from me explaining exactly what happened. I sat at the computer for hours trying to write it, but everything sounded crazy when I read it back. How do you explain a redstone calculator to people who think Minecraft is for training killers? I wrote 5 different versions and deleted them all. Mom tried to help, but she didn't understand the game either, so her suggestions made it sound worse. That night, Mom got a Facebook message from someone I didn't know. It was the Discord moderator for the Ender Squad, and he'd heard what happened from one of the other kids' parents. He sent Mom screenshots of our actual conversations, which were all about diamond mining and villager trading, and whether skeleton spawners were better than zombie spawners. He explained that the server had strict rules against talking about real violence, and anyone who broke them got instantly banned. Mom printed everything out and added it to her growing folder of evidence. 2 days later, the doorbell rang, and it was CPS again, but this time they brought someone new. The woman introduced herself as a technology specialist and said she actually played Minecraft with her kids. Mom's filling out mental state questions while crying? That seems like exactly the kind of thing that makes the situation look worse than it is. The technology specialist from CPS actually playing Minecraft feels oddly convenient. I'm curious if she really understands the game. She sat down at our kitchen table and looked through all of Aunt Lucia's screenshots while the other CPS worker took notes. The tech specialist pointed at each image and explained what it really showed. She said the TNT was just pixels for mining, and the coordinates were clearly for the game world, not real locations. She told her supervisor it was obviously just normal gameplay and nothing dangerous. The supervisor wrote something in her folder and said they'd include this in their report. The threat assessment meeting came faster than I wanted. We sat in the principal's conference room while 3 adults stared at me across the table. The principal asked about my friends and I told her I had a few, but mostly I liked playing games online. The psychologist wanted to know about my grades, which were mostly B's, except for math where I had an A. She asked if I felt angry at the school or if anyone bullied me. I said no, but she kept asking the same thing different ways like the detective had. The resource officer asked if I understood why adults were worried. I tried to explain that the coordinates matching the school was just bad luck, but he didn't look convinced. Mom handed over Mr. Paxson's letter about the homework and the Discord screenshots. The principal read through everything while we sat there sweating. After an hour, they said they'd make a decision about my return to the school within a few days. We walked out past the secretary who used to smile at me, but now wouldn't look up from her desk. 3 days later, they called us back for another meeting, but this time the school psychologist was there too. She had glasses that kept sliding down her nose, and she pushed them up every few seconds while looking at her notes. She asked if I understood why the adults were worried about the coordinates matching the school. I tried to explain again that it was just random bad luck that my game coordinates happened to match a real place. The calculator just found the closest stronghold in the game world, and I had no idea Lakeview Elementary even existed until Aunt Lucia started screaming about it. She nodded and wrote something down, but then asked the same question 5 different ways, like she was trying to catch me lying. After 20 more minutes of questions, she finally said she believed me, but they still had to follow their safety protocols. The principal pulled out a typed paper and slid it across the table to my mom. They were creating a safety plan that meant I had to see the school counselor every week for the whole rest of the school year. I couldn't use any computers at the school, except in the library where the librarian could see my screen at all times. The principal would check in with me every Monday morning before first period, and I had to eat lunch in the counselor's office for the first 2 weeks back. They said I could return to the school next Monday, but I'd be under strict monitoring, and any problems would mean immediate suspension. Mom asked if this would go on my permanent record, and they said it depends on how the rest of the year goes. When we got home, Mom went straight to her laptop and started searching for something. She found the police department website and clicked through different pages until she found a form for requesting body camera footage. She filled out all the boxes with our case number and the date of the raid and her contact information. The website said it takes 30 days to process requests, and they might deny it if there's an ongoing investigation. Mom printed 3 copies and said she'd mail one and drop one off in person tomorrow just to make sure they got it. That evening, our home phone rang, and Mom answered it. Her face got tight, and she hung up without saying anything. She told us it was a reporter from the local news asking for our side of the story because someone had leaked details about the SWAT raid. Mom deleted the voicemail and told me and Dad not to answer the door for anyone we didn't know. She put a sign on our door that said no soliciting and no media. The next morning, 2 more reporters called, and Mom unplugged the phone completely. By Friday, the rumors at the school had gotten completely out of control. Mom got an email from another parent saying kids were telling everyone I had a kill list with names on it. That was never part of anything, and Mom immediately forwarded the email to the principal. Another parent sent an email demanding that I shouldn't be allowed back at the school at all because their kid was scared. The principal had to send out a message to all the parents saying the situation had been investigated and appropriate safety measures were in place. That weekend, Dad drove 40 minutes to a free immigration clinic.